When we get interested in a segment at Battery, we tend to do two things. We will go after the demand side, and that means we'll talk to people who are potential buyers of software in that segment. So I went out and spoke to folks who ran data centers and got a sense of what was most important to them in terms of problems they wanted to solve that year. And then what we'll do on the other side is we'll talk to the folks on the supply side, potential vendors who can solve that problem.
In the first quarter of 2001, the project team began to really dig into this area and meet with a number of possible investment opportunities. At the same time, I became aware that Vijay Manwani, who was a founder of EggRock Partners, which was a Battery 5 portfolio company, was going to leave Breakaway Solutions. And I invited him to join Battery as an EIR, and this was one of the areas he was very interested in helping us out with.
At that time, the market conditions were not very good, and making a transition to my next venture, it was obvious to me that I wanted to spend some time at a place where I could see enough deal flow to pick a good opportunity to kind of spend my next 3 or 4 years.
As part of diligence on another deal, I bumped into a CTO named Jason Oliver. Jason really understood data center operations, and we had a discussion about the market trends in that space. And at the end of the call, I asked him, like I do on almost all my calls, Jason, do you know of some interesting companies that are out there that are trying to solve this problem in an innovative way? And he mentioned to me Network Shell, and that's actually how I got to them.
It was a Thursday afternoon, and Neeraj calls me what I consider to be out of the blue. And he introduces himself as Neeraj Agrawal from Battery Ventures, and he basically told me that he had been talking to Jason Oliver, who had recommended that Battery Ventures takes a look at our company because we might have an interesting technology that they might be interested in.
When I looked at Network Shell, I sensed that the strengths were, it had a product that was in the marketplace that was shipping, it had customers who were buying the product, and the customers I spoke to liked the product. However, on the weakness side, I didn't see a strong enough management team to scale the business to the next level. And at that point, I thought about introducing it to some of the folks we had internally. And I really sensed that there was an opportunity to introduce Vijay to Thomas and possibly bring both of their ideas together. And the way we made that happen is Vijay went in and did due diligence on Network Shell, both for our benefit, as well as to get a sense of whether this was something that he could really leverage for his idea.
So a little bit late in the process, I finally did a telephone interview with Vijay, and I explained the technology to him, which I have to admit probably didn't go down that well. And he was still interested, and we eventually did a presentation, an internet presentation of the product to him, which at that time caught his interest a lot more.
A lot of the initial calls at Battery tend to be information gathering calls, and you don't really communicate any enthusiasm at the initial call because you're just forming a mental picture, and usually you form that mental picture after the call. After the call, I was actually quite excited because it was obvious to me what the innovation was. I just didn't believe what it was till I saw a demo of what it was. When I saw a demo of what it was in the second call, it was very, very obvious to me that this was something that could really grow into a substantial product.
Thomas, Vijay, and I spent many phone calls talking about the different ideas and the different ways to build on top of Network Shell. And after probably a month, we concluded that there was a lot of synergy here. And then the next step in that process was to figure out whether Thomas would fit in with the team Vijay was working with, whether they would get along, and whether they wanted to work 80 hours a week together and try to realize this synergy.
Neeraj floats the idea past me, would you consider moving to Boston? And we talked about it a little bit more. We had already known about the idea of, Thomas with great technology, Vijay and Dave, great management, perhaps a marriage would be nice. I was fully aware that I needed professional help from the management side, and as I hung up the phone, I just kind of walked around and said to myself, looks like I could be moving to Boston.
Today, Bladelogic has an interesting opportunity ahead of them. They were able to close a deal in Q4 in 60 days. And that's from the point they met the customer to the point they got the purchase order. Usually it takes most of our companies 6 months. And they are being pulled by the customer. They're being asked for more product quicker. And that's a great spot to be in.